Welcome friends in my new video. I am Professor S.R. Chakne, Assistant Professor of Agronomy at Sadguru College of Agriculture, Mirasgaon. Today we will discuss about the lecture number 2 and 3, that is the problems and prospects of rain-fed agriculture in India. In this lecture today we will discuss about the different problems of crop production in the dry lands. The problems or the constraints of the crop production in dry land, which is broadly grouped into the different categories. These are: first one, climatic constraint; then second one, soil related constraint; then third one, that is the traditional cultivation practices; next one, that is the heavy weed problem; next, lack of suitable varieties; and last, constraint, that is the socio-economic constraint. These are the different constraints which are broadly grouped into the 6 group. In that, first important constraint, that is climatic constraint. In climatic constraint, the first constraint that is related with the rainfall. In that we are studying firstly the rainfall characteristics. Among the different climatic parameter, rainfall is an important factor that influence the crop production in the dry regions. So, in the climatic constraint, the rainfall is a very important climatic constraint. These are mainly related with the crop production, and the crop production which is mostly affected by the rainfall characteristics. Then, which are the different rainfall characteristics are there? These rainfall characteristics we have to study in detail, as the first characteristic is the variable rainfall. Rainfall varies both in time as well as the space dimension. That means whatever the rainfall that is received in the dryland area, that varies according to the time as well as the space. That means these are varies according to season, as well as it is also varies with the region or the place to place also. Then annual rainfall varies greatly from year to year, and naturally its coefficient of variation is very high. So, the annual rainfall that varies, that means that is different from year to year. Suppose in one year the good rainfall is received, then in next year maybe a less amount of the rainfall that is received, and due to that there is the variation in the coefficient also very high. Then higher the rainfall, less is the coefficient of variation. If the rainfall is high, then the coefficient of variation is less. Then mostly the crop failures are due to the uncertain rains are more frequent in regions with the lesser rainfall. That means those areas which receiving the less rainfall, there is the frequent crop failure may occur. Then the average annual rainfall of India is 1192 millimeter, where as in case of the Andhra Pradesh it is only 890 millimeter. That means this figure shows that the rainfall variation which is occur due to the place to place as well as the time to time. So this is the first rainfall characteristic, that is the variability of the rainfall we have studied here. Then the next rainfall characteristic, that is the intensity and the distribution of the rainfall. In general, more than 50% of the total rainfall is usually received in 3 to 5 rainy days only. That means whatever the amount of the rainfall that is received in the rainy season, out of that more than 50% of the rainfall that is received within 3 to 5 rainy days. That means their distribution which is not equal in a season. Then such intensive rainfall result in the substantial loss of water due to the surface runoff. Then when the rainfall of more than 50% that is received within a 3 to 5 rainy days, then in that condition there is the loss of water which is takes place due to the process of the runoff. That means most of the water which is lost through the flow. Then this process also accelerate the soil erosion. That means it increases the erosion of the soil in a large amount. Then the distribution of rainfall during the crop growing season is more important than the total amount of the rainfall which is received in the dryland agriculture. That means whatever the rainfall which is received in the rainy season, there should be the equal distribution throughout the season. Then it is very important than the total amount of the rainfall that is received in that particular season. So this is about the intensity and the distribution of rainfall, as the intensity of rainfall as well as the distribution of the rainfall that also plays the important role in the crop production. Then next characteristic, that is the aberrations or the variation in monsoon behavior. That means what is the aberrations or the variations which is mostly observed in the monsoon behavior. So there is aberrations, that means the abnormal conditions of the rainfall. These are firstly the late onset of monsoon, that means the late start of monsoon which is occurred during the rainy season. If the onset of monsoon is delayed, in that case the crops or varieties which are recommended to the region cannot be sown in the time. If there is the late start of monsoon which is takes place, in that case whatever the certain crops or the recommended varieties which are selected in a particular region, that cannot be taken if there is the onset of monsoon is late. Then the delayed sowing lead to uneconomical crop yield. If the sowing date is delayed, in that condition the less yield will be obtained. So this is the disadvantages in the process of the crop production, as it obtain the low yield as compared to the crop which are sown in a time. Then second variation in monsoon behavior, that is the early withdrawal of the monsoon, that means the early stopping of the rainfall during the monsoon season. So this early withdrawal of monsoon, this is the situation which is equally or more dangerous than the onset of the monsoon, that means very dangerous by considering the cultivation of crop as compared to the late onset of the monsoon. Then rainy season crops will be subjected to the terminal stress leading to the poor crop yield. Then if the early withdrawal of monsoon which is takes place and which is leads to or which leads to the poor crop yield, that means very less yield which is obtained in that condition. Then similarly the post rainy season crops fail due to the inadequate available soil moisture, especially during the reproductive as well as the maturity phases. That means if the stress condition will be occur at the time of the crops reproductive stage or the maturity phase, in that condition mostly the crops are fail due in the post rainy season, that means in a rabi season. Then next aberration or the variation, that is the prolonged dry spell, that is the break of monsoon for 7 to 10 days may not be serious concern. If the break of monsoon for a period of 7 to 10 days, that is not considered seriously, but the breaks of more than 15 days duration, especially at critical stages for the moisture stage, that leads to the reduction in yield. That means if the break of monsoon for more than 15 days, that leads to the yield reduction. Then drought due to the break in monsoon may adversely affect the crops in shallow soil than in a deep soil. That if there is the monsoon break will be occur in the shallow soil, which is very dangerous as compared to the deep soil or the black soil. Then next constraint, that is the high atmospheric temperature. So what are the different effect of the high atmospheric temperature, and this is considered as the one of the constraint in the dryland agriculture. In that, because of high atmospheric temperature, the atmospheric demand for moisture which is increases, and that causing the high evapotranspiration losses during the moisture stress condition. If the temperature is high in dryland condition, In that condition, the moisture demand of the crop is increases. That means the water requirement of the crop is increases, and that result into the high evapotranspiration losses. That means more quantity of water that is lost through the processes of the transpiration as well as the evapotranspiration, and the combined loss of water from the soil as well as the aerial parts of the plant, that is known as the evapotranspiration. And in such a way that if the atmospheric temperature is high, in that condition the high evapotranspiration losses will be occur, and finally that resulted into the moisture stress condition. Then next constraint, that is the low relative humidity. If the relative humidity is low, that resulted into the high evapotranspiration losses, and that causes the moisture stress whenever the moisture is the limiting factor. If the relative humidity is low, that result into the high evapotranspiration losses. Again, it leads to the moisture stress condition, and there is the wilting of the plant may occur. Then what is the relative humidity? That is the amount of the moisture which is present in the air, that is known as the relative humidity, and that if the relative humidity is less, then it causes the high evapotranspiration losses. Then the next climatic constraint, that is the hot and dry winds. So the hot and dry wind that causes the desiccation of the leaves, and finally it resulted into the moisture stress. Then the high turbulent wind, especially during the summer month, cause soil erosion, that resulting in the dust storm as well as the loss of fertile soil which can be lost. Then the next constraint, that is the high atmospheric water demand. So due to the high atmospheric water demand, the potential evapotranspiration that exceeds the precipitation during most part of the year. That means if there is the atmospheric demand is high, in that condition the potential evapotranspiration that may increase as compared to the amount of the water which is received by the process of the precipitation, and that will be occur during most part of the year. Then next constraint, that is the soil constraint. There are different types of the soil constraints which are affecting the crop production. These are given as a below. So we will discuss these different soil constraint as one by one. In that first soil constraint, that is the inadequate soil moisture availability. The moisture holding capacity of soil in the dry region is low due to the shallow depth, especially in case of the alphy soil, that means in case of the red soil. Then low rainfall and the low organic matter content. Then find the inadequate amount of the moisture which is available in the dryland area. There are certain reasons behind it. In that first reason, that is the low moisture holding capacity of the dryland soil, and this is because of the depth of soil is less in case of the alphy soil. Then it also receiving the low rainfall in that area, and it also contain the low organic matter. So these are the three important reasons behind the inadequate availability of the soil moisture in the dryland area. Then second soil constraint, that is the poor organic matter content. The organic matter content in most of the soils under dryland condition is very low. That is due to the high temperature and the low addition of the organic manure. So in case of the dryland soil, the organic matter content of most of the soil under this condition is very low. Then the reason behind it, that it the area which is receiving the high temperature, as well as there is the low addition of the organic manure which is takes place. Then the poor organic matter content adversely affect the soil physical properties which are related to the moisture storage. Then the next important soil constraint, that is the poor soil fertility. So why the fertility of soil in the dryland condition is very low? Then we have to discuss this point, as due to the low accumulation of the organic matter and loss of fertile topsoil by the soil erosion, the dryland soils are poor in fertility status. Then The most of the dryland soils are deficient in particularly nitrogen as well as the zinc. So the fertility status of the dryland soil which is poor due to the accumulation of the organic matter, low accumulation of the organic matter as well as the loss of fertile topsoil due to the continuous cultivation of the crop as well as the soil erosion. So this is the reason behind the poor fertility of the soil. Then most of the dryland soils which are particularly deficient in the nitrogen and in a zinc. Then next soil constraint, that is the soil deterioration due to the erosion by the wind as well as the water. In India, nearly 175 million hectare of land which is subjected to the different land degradation. That means out of the total geographical area, 175 million hectare of land that is subjected to the different types of the land degradation. Among these degradation, the soil erosion is the very important one. Then the erosion that causes the loss of the top fertile soil, that leaving the poor subsoil for the cultivation of the crop. Then due to the continuous soil erosion that causes the loss of the top fertile soil, and due to that they leaves the poor subsoil for the crop cultivation. Due to that the soil deterioration which is takes place due to the erosion which is takes place with the agencies of the wind as well as the water. Then next constraint, that is the soil crust problem. Particularly in case of the red soil, the formation of the hard surface soil layers that hinders the emergence of the seedlings which ultimately affect the plant population. Then the crusting of soil surface after the rainfall reduces the infiltration as well as the storage of rainfall due to the high runoff. Due to the crust problem, there is the crusting of soil which is takes place due to the rainfall, and due to that it result into the reduced infiltration as well as the storage of the rainfall, that means rainwater, due to the high runoff. Then the next soil constraint, that is the presence of the hard layer as well as the deep crack. So the presence of the hard layer, that means the hard compact surface of the soil, and deep crack that affect the crop production, especially in case of the black soil. So there is the formation of the hard layer as well as the deep cracks that can be observed particularly in case of the black soil, and due to the formation of the hard layer as well as the deep crack, there is the difficulty in the taking the crop production, mainly in case of the black soil. Then next constraint, that is the various cultivation practices. Then the existing management practices which are adopted by the farmers, they are evolved based on the long term experience by the farmer. That means whatever the cultivation practices these are adopted by the farmer, they are the adopted according to the experience. That means mostly the traditional cultivation practices are generally used by the farmer. Then these traditional management practices which includes the plowing the land along the slope, that means the farmers which adopt the plowing operation along the slope, they are not adopting the plowing operation across the slope of the land. Due to that most of the water which is received through the rainfall that can be lost through the process of the runoff. That means it reduces the infiltration rate into that soil. Then second one, that is the broadcasting the seeds or sowing behind the country plow, that leads to the poor as well as the uneven plant stand. That means there is no maintenance of the optimum plant population which is occurred due to the broadcasting method which is used as a sowing method. Again the second method which is used, that is the sowing behind the country plow, and due to that there is the optimum plant population is not maintained. Then the adoption of the monsoon sowing, then choice of crop based on the rainfall. Then whatever the crops which are selected in the dryland condition, they are selected only based on the rainfall situation. Then the application of FIN FIM in very limited quantity, that means very less amount of very less quantity of the FIM that can be added into the soil. Then mostly the weeds are controlled by the hand weeding. Then farmers which adopt the mixed cropping. Then next one, that is the use of the conventional system of the harvesting, that means that they are using the traditional methods for the harvesting the various crop. Then traditional storage system, that means the farmers are nowadays the farmers are generally adopting the traditional storage system for the produce. So these are the some traditional management practices which are adopted by the farmer, and due to that the income as well as the production of the farmer is very less in case of the dryland area. Then next constraint, that is the lack of the suitable varieties. Then most of the crop varieties which are available for cultivation in dry lands are meant for the irrigated agriculture. Then there are no any special varieties exclusively meant for the dryland areas, that means there is no special varieties which are available for the dryland areas. Then due to that more efforts which are required to develop the varieties in different crops exclusively meant for the dryland agriculture. So there is the challenging one to develop the varieties which are required for the dryland agriculture. So there is the no availability of the suitable varieties for the dryland agriculture, and due to that the production will be obtained very low. Then next constraint, that is the socio-economic constraint. The economic condition of dryland farmer is very poor because there are some reason behind it. The economic condition of the dryland farmer is very poor or less due to the less access to the input, that means whatever the inputs which are required for the cultivation of crop, they are not available in a sufficient quantity as well as they are not available in a time. Then non availability of the credit in time. So for the purchasing of the different types of the input, the farmer require the credit, but these credit which are not available in time, due to that they can't purchase the available input for the crop cultivation. Then the risk bearing capacity of the dry land farmer is very low. That means if one crop is failed, then in that case the risk bearing capacity of the farmer is not well. Due to that the economic condition of the dryland farmer is very poor. Then the dryland farmer resort to low input agriculture which result into the poor yield. So there are some reasons behind the economic condition of the farmer is poor, and due to that farmer adopt the low input agriculture, and finally it result into the poor yield or the production. Thank you.